The VA hospital's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows on Clarence Rowe's dark skin as young veterans snickered at his trembling hands. An old black man with nothing but a worn jacket and unsteady signature. Barely worth their notice. Lieutenant. Grayson might have dismissed him too, if not for the moment Clarence collapsed and his sleeve rolled up. The faded tattoo, GU9, triggered immediate security protocols and sealed records. Ghost Unit 9 was supposed to be a myth, its soldiers long dead, its missions never acknowledged. But myths don't have heartbeats, and they don't have daughters, who never knew their fathers existed. As Grayson begins unraveling 5 decades of deliberate erasure, powerful men emerge from the shadows, determined to keep their secrets buried, along with anyone who exposes them. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The waiting room of the Jefferson County VA hospital buzzed with the familiar sounds of veterans, waiting their turn. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the worn linoleum floor. In the corner sat Clarence Rowe, an 84-year-old black man whose hands trembled visibly as he clutched a manila folder to his chest. He wore a faded olive-green military jacket with no insignia, and a dusty cap pulled low over his weathered face. His eyes, though clouded with age, darted occasionally to the clock mounted on the wall. Across the room, a group of younger veterans, in their 30s, lounged in plastic chairs, their service still fresh in their memories. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a Marine Corps tattoo peeking from beneath his t-shirt sleeve, nudged his buddy and nodded toward Clarence. "Check out Grandpa over there," he whispered, but not quietly enough. Bet he never saw a day of real combat in his life. His friend snickered. Probably just cleaned boots and peeled potatoes. They didn't let the colored boys do much else back then. A third veteran joined in. "My grandfather said they kept them separate, you know. Bet that jacket's just for show." Their laughter rippled through the waiting room, causing Clarence to pull his folder closer to his chest, his knuckles whitening with the effort. He kept his eyes fixed on the scuffed floor, his expression unchanging as if he hadn't heard them at all. The automatic doors at the entrance slid open, and Lieutenant Nolan Grayson stepped into the waiting room. At 35, Grayson moved. With the practiced discipline of a career military man, his posture perfect even in civilian clothes. Only the regulation haircut and the way his eyes automatically assessed the room betrayed his active duty status. He'd been temporarily assigned to administrative duty at the VA hospital while recovering from a training injury, a post he considered little more than glorified desk work. Grayson's gaze swept across the room, lingering momentarily on Clarence. His eyebrow twitched almost imperceptibly as he noted the old man's military jacket, with no visible rank or unit patches. Another pretender, he thought. In his 3 weeks at the VA, he'd already encountered his share of embellished service stories. "Mr. Thompson?" A nurse called from the reception desk, and a middle-aged veteran rose to follow her through the double doors. As the laughter from the younger veterans grew louder, a black nurse in her 40s emerged from behind the reception desk, her name, tag identifying her as Lisa Thompson. Her face hardened as she overheard the comments, and she marched directly toward the group. "That's enough," she said firmly, her voice cutting through their laughter. "You should be ashamed of yourselves." The Marine with the tattoo straightened. "We're just having a little fun, ma'am." "At the expense of a fellow veteran," Lisa replied sharply. "A man who's earned more respect than you're showing." "How would you know what he did?" one of them challenged. Lisa's eyes flashed. "I've been working here for 15 years. Mr. Rowe has been coming here longer than that. Trust me when I say he's not what he seems." Grayson, who had been observing the exchange, found himself curious despite his skepticism. He moved closer to Clarence, taking the empty seat beside him. "Morning, sir," he said. "Lieutenant Nolan Grayson." Clarence looked up slowly, his eyes briefly meeting Grayson's before dropping back to the folder in his lap. "Clarence Rowe," he replied, his voice a gravelly whisper. "Army?" Grayson asked, nodding toward the jacket. Clarence gave a slight nod. "What unit did you serve with, Mr. Rowe?" A long silence followed. Clarence's hands trembled more visibly now. "It's not worth telling," he finally said, the words barely audible. Before Grayson could press further, a nurse called out, "Clarence Rowe, the doctor will see you now." Clarence stood with effort, his arthritic knees cracking audibly. As he shuffled toward the reception desk, the folder slipped from his grasp, spilling papers across the floor. Grayson moved quickly to help, gathering the scattered documents. He caught glimpses of medical forms, prescription lists, and what looked like heavily redacted military paperwork before Clarence snatched them back with surprising force. "I've got it," the old man insisted, his voice suddenly firm. At the reception desk, the nurse handed Clarence a clipboard with forms to sign. His trembling hand struggled with the pen, the signature an illegible scrawl. Grayson, who had followed him, watched as Clarence's frustration grew with each failed attempt to steady his hand. "Need some help with that?" Grayson offered, though. His eyes still held judgment. Clarence shook his head stubbornly. "Been signing my name for 84 years. Don't need help now." As Clarence turned to follow the nurse through the double doors, he suddenly faltered. His knees buckled, and he pitched forward. Grayson lunged, catching the old man before he hit the floor. The clipboard clattered away as Clarence's weight sagged against him. "I need help over here," Grayson called out. Lisa rushed over, followed by 2 other nurses. "It's probably his blood sugar again," she said, helping Grayson lower Clarence to the floor. "He's diabetic." As they laid Clarence down, his sleeve rolled up, revealing a faded blue-black tattoo on his forearm. Grayson froze, his eyes fixed on the design. A dagger crossed with a bamboo staff, encircled by a snake eating its tail. Above it, the faded text, GU9. "That can't be," Grayson whispered, the blood draining from his face. Lisa glanced at him curiously as she checked Clarence's pulse. "What is it?" Grayson couldn't tear his eyes from the tattoo. "Ghost Unit 9, he murmured. "But that's impossible." "What's Ghost Unit 9? "A myth," Grayson said, his voice hollow. "A special ops unit from Vietnam. They told us about them in officer school, but half the instructors said they never existed. Medical staff arrived with a gurney, and they lifted Clarence onto it. As they wheeled him away, Grayson stood rooted to the spot, his mind racing. Ghost Unit 9 was a legend among certain military circles, a supposedly integrated special operations team that worked deep in territories where American troops officially never set foot. Their missions were so classified that the unit itself had been erased from official records. Grayson shook himself from his thoughts and headed to the administrative office. He needed to check Clarence's file. If the old man really had been part of Ghost Unit 9, his service record would confirm it. But when he entered his credentials into the hospital database and searched for Clarence Rowe, a red message flashed across the screen. "Access denied. Clearance level insufficient." Grayson stared at the screen in disbelief. He had clearance to access any veteran's basic service record. Unless, he tried again, using his military override code. Another rejection message appeared. "File classified. Contact Pentagon Records Division." The administrative assistant noticed his frustrated expression. "Problem, Lieutenant?" "Just trying to access a patient file," Grayson replied casually, though his mind was racing. "Which patient?" "Clarence Rowe." The assistant's fingers flew across her keyboard, then she frowned. "That's odd. His file was accessible yesterday. Someone must have flagged it overnight." Grayson nodded absently, already forming a plan. If the system wouldn't give him answers, he'd have to find them elsewhere. Hours later, as evening settled over the hospital, Grayson stood in the doorway of Clarence's room. The old man lay sleeping, an IV drip in his arm, and a heart monitor beeping steadily beside him. In the soft glow of the medical equipment, Clarence looked smaller, frailer, just an old man with diabetes and arthritis. But that tattoo changed everything. "What did you do, old man?" Grayson whispered to himself. "What secrets are you carrying?" The following morning, Lieutenant Grayson sat in his car in the VA hospital parking lot, his phone pressed to his ear. He'd called in a favor from his academy days. Mark Donovan, now working intelligence clearance at the Pentagon. "I need information on Ghost Unit 9, Grayson said without preamble when Mark answered. A long silence followed. "Where did you hear that name?" Mark's voice had gone cold. "I've got a patient here with their tattoo on his arm." "That's impossible. All those men are dead." Grayson's grip tightened on the phone. "Not all of them, apparently. His name is Clarence Rowe." Another long pause. "Nolan, listen to me carefully. Drop this. Whatever you think you found, whatever you think you know, let it go. These waters are too deep." "Mark, I just want—" "This isn't a request," Mark cut in. "This is me trying to keep you from ruining your career. Or worse. Ghost Unit 9 is still classified at the highest levels. Walking away now is your best option." The line went dead. Grayson stared at his phone, Mark's warning echoing in his mind. But instead of deterring him, the warning only fueled his curiosity. Something about Clarence's story didn't add up, and now Grayson was determined to uncover the truth. As he walked through the hospital entrance, a memory surfaced from his officer training. During a classified briefing on the history of special operations, an instructor had shown them a blurry black and white photograph. 8 men in jungle fatigues, their faces deliberately obscured, standing in front of a military helicopter. One of the men had his sleeve rolled up, revealing the same tattoo Grayson had seen on Clarence's arm. The instructor had mentioned the unit only in passing. A rumored Black Ops team that officially never existed, before moving on to documented operations. Lost in thought, Grayson nearly collided with Nurse Lisa as she exited a patient's room. "Lieutenant," she acknowledged, her expression guarded. "How can I help you?" "I wanted to check on Mr. Rowe. Is he awake?" "He is, but he's not up for visitors." She studied his face. "This isn't just professional concern, is it? This is about what you saw yesterday." Grayson hesitated, then nodded. "The tattoo. Do you know what it means?" Lisa glanced around the corridor before lowering her voice. "Not exactly, but I know something's not right with his file. 3 years ago, Clarence was admitted with a gunshot wound to his shoulder. An old wound that had reopened, he said. But when I saw his official medical records, there was no mention of any gunshot injury, and that wasn't the only discrepancy." "You think his file's been altered?" "I think whatever Clarence did in the service, someone wants it buried." She met his gaze directly. "And I think you know more than you're saying." Grayson weighed his options. If what he suspected was true, sharing classified information could end his career. But something told him Lisa might be his best ally in uncovering the truth. Ghost Unit 9 was supposedly a highly classified special operations team during Vietnam, he explained in a low voice. Integrated when most units weren't. They operated outside normal channels, in territories where America officially had no boots on the ground. "Like Laos or Cambodia?" "Exactly. But officially they never existed. Their missions were so classified that the entire unit was erased from military records." Lisa's eyes widened. "And you think Clarence was part of this unit?" "The tattoo is their mark, but according to my source, all members of Ghost Unit 9 are dead." "Well, Clarence is very much alive," Lisa said, "and now I'm even more curious about what's in his real file." That evening, after his shift ended, Grayson returned to the hospital. He waited until the night nurse made her rounds before slipping into Clarence's room. The old man was sleeping soundly, his breathing deep and regular. Grayson moved quietly to the chair where Clarence's jacket hung and carefully searched the pockets. His fingers found a small weathered notebook tucked into an inner pocket. Hesitating only briefly, Grayson slipped it out and retreated to the corridor. Under the bright hospital lights, he examined his find. The notebook was bound in faded leather, its edges worn smooth from years of handling. Inside, the pages were filled with cramped handwriting, some entries dated as far back as 1969. Grayson flipped through, catching fragments. April 17, 1971. Extraction successful. Davis wounded but stable. Target secure. June 8, 1972. Langston nearly didn't make it. 3 days in jungle territory. Radio silence maintained. August 24, 1972. Command denying mission authorization retroactively. Something's wrong. Collins acting strange. Names, dates, locations, all carefully documented in Clarence's steady hand. But nothing explicitly mentioned Ghost Unit 9 or its official operations. It was a personal record, not a military one. A sound from Clarence's room startled Grayson. He quickly returned the notebook to its place and stepped back into the hallway just as an orderly wheeled an elderly white man in a wheelchair past him. The man, with a shock of white hair and oxygen tubes in his nostrils, glanced into Clarence's room as they passed. Suddenly, he gripped the orderly's arm. "Stop," he commanded, his voice surprisingly strong. "Who's in that room?" The orderly checked the nameplate. "Clarence Rowe." The old man in the wheelchair went pale. "Clarence Rowe is here? In this hospital?" "You know him?" Grayson asked, stepping forward. The man's watery blue eyes fixed on Grayson. "Who's asking?" "Lieutenant Nolan Grayson. I'm working admin here temporarily." "Eddie Langston," the man replied. "But everyone calls me Pops." His gaze drifted back to Clarence's sleeping form. "That man saved my life in '72, in a place that doesn't exist." Grayson's pulse quickened. "Langston, the same name from Clarence's journal. You were in Vietnam?" Pops gave a humorless laugh. "That's what my file says, but Clarence and I weren't in Vietnam, not officially. We were somewhere else entirely." "Ghost Unit 9? Grayson ventured. Pops's eyes widened, then narrowed suspiciously. "How do you know that name, Lieutenant?" "I saw Clarence's tattoo yesterday when he collapsed. I recognized it from my officer training." Pop studied him for a long moment, then nodded to the orderly. "Take me back to my room. The lieutenant here is going to join me for a chat." In Pops's room, with the door closed and the orderly dismissed, the old veteran fixed Grayson with a penetrating stare. "They still teaching about Ghost Unit in officer school? Thought they would have buried that long ago." "They barely mention it," Grayson admitted. "Just enough to make us curious." "Curious is dangerous when it comes to ghosts," Pops warned. "Some things stay buried for a reason, but Clarence isn't buried. He's here, with the unit's tattoo on his arm." Pops sighed heavily. "Clarence Rowe was the bravest man I ever knew. We were sent into places American soldiers weren't supposed to be, to do things that never officially happened." "What kind of things?" "Rescues, mostly. POW extractions, intelligence gathering, the kind of missions that couldn't go through official channels because officially we weren't there." Pops's gaze drifted to the window, to the darkness beyond. "Our last mission went sideways. Bad intelligence. We walked into a trap." "What happened?" "We lost half the unit that day. Clarence got the rest of us out. Carried me 3 miles through the jungle with a bullet in his leg." Pops shook his head at the memory. "When we got back, they told us the mission would be scrubbed from the record. We were debriefed separately, sworn to secrecy. Ghost Unit 9 was officially disbanded, erased. We were reassigned to regular units given new service records. And no one ever spoke about it again. Those who tried disappeared," Pops said grimly. "One day they were there, the next, gone. After a while we got the message, keep quiet and live, or speak up and vanish." Grayson sat back, processing this information. "So for 50 years, you've all kept this secret?" "Those of us who survived," Pops confirmed, "though I always figured Clarence for dead. Last I heard, he'd been sent on a solo mission in '73, never came back. Yet here he is. Here he is," Pops echoed. "And if you're asking questions about Ghost Unit, others will be too. Be careful, Lieutenant. The men who buried this secret won't want it dug up." Grayson left the hospital that night with more questions than answers. As he drove home, he noticed a black SUV pull out behind him, maintaining a consistent distance. When he turned onto a side street, the SUV followed. When he made a series of random turns, the vehicle stayed with him. Heart pounding, Grayson executed a sudden U-turn and accelerated down a narrow alley, emerging onto a busier street. The SUV was nowhere to be seen, but the message was clear. Someone was watching. At his apartment, Grayson double-checked the locks before settling at his kitchen table. He spread out everything he had, his hastily scribbled notes from his conversation with Pops, a rough sketch of the tattoo he'd seen on Clarence's arm, and a printed map of Southeast Asia, focusing on the border regions of Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Standing back, he surveyed his makeshift investigation board. The pieces were starting to come together, forming a picture of a secret unit operating in the shadows of a controversial war. A unit that, according to official records, never existed. The tattoo was the key, the mark of Ghost Unit 9, a brotherhood forged in classified operations and bound by forced silence. And somehow, against all odds, Clarence Rowe had survived to carry that mark into the present day. Grayson's phone rang, startling him. The screen showed an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Lieutenant Grayson?" An unfamiliar voice, male, authoritative. "Who's asking?" "Someone who knows you've been asking questions about Ghost Unit 9. A pause. "Someone who can give you answers." Grayson's grip tightened on the phone. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone." "Tomorrow noon, Jefferson Park, the bench by the old oak tree." The line went dead. Grayson stared at his phone, then back at the tattoo sketch on his table. He knew he should walk away, heed Mark's warning, protect his career. But the mystery of Clarence Rowe and Ghost Unit 9 had taken hold of him now. Whatever, secrets lay buried in the past. Grayson was determined to uncover them, no matter the cost. The humid air clung to Lieutenant Clarence Rowe's skin as he crouched in the dense Laotian jungle. At 31, he moved with the silent precision of a man who had learned that noise meant death. The year was 1972, and officially, he wasn't here. None of them were. Behind him, 5 other men followed in a tight formation. 3 white, 2 black, their faces streaked with camouflage paint, their eyes constantly scanning the foliage. Ghost Unit 9 operated in the shadows of a war that America publicly denied fighting. Their mission: extract 3 American POWs being held at a hidden camp 10 miles north of the Laotian border. 2 clicks to target, Clarence whispered, his voice barely audible over the chorus of insects. James Langston, the man Clarence would later know as Pops, nodded grimly. At 27, he was the unit's demolitions expert, carrying enough C4 to level a small building. "Radio check," ordered David Mitchell, their communications specialist. Each man responded in turn, confirming their radio functioned on the secure channel. Last to respond was Peter Walker, their newest member, transferred in just 3 weeks earlier when their previous scout had been sent home with malaria. "Clear," Walker said, adjusting his radio. "Though we're getting some interference on the backup frequency." Clarence frowned. "Switch to tertiary. We can't risk any signal bleed." They moved deeper into the jungle, following coordinates provided by intelligence. The plan was simple: infiltrate at nightfall, neutralize the guards, extract the prisoners, and be at the extraction point before dawn. In and out, leaving no trace of American involvement. As dusk settled over the jungle, they reached the ridge overlooking the camp. Through binoculars, Clarence counted 8 guards, fewer than intelligence had indicated. "Something's off," he muttered. "Maybe they moved some prisoners," suggested Mitchell. "Or maybe our intel is outdated," Langston added. Clarence scanned the camp again. The layout matched their briefing, but the reduced security made him uneasy. "We proceed with caution. Walker, you take point. Mitchell, maintain radio contact with base. Everyone else, standard formation." They descended the ridge silently, using the growing darkness as cover. The plan was executing flawlessly, until Walker suddenly broke formation, running toward the camp perimeter. "Walker!" Clarence hissed. "Fall back!" But it was too late. Floodlights blazed to life, illuminating the jungle. The staccato burst of AK-47s shattered the night as hidden enemy soldiers opened fire from concealed positions. "Ambush!" Clarence shouted. "Take cover!" The unit scattered, diving behind trees and into ditches. Clarence watched in horror as 2 of his men fell immediately, cut down by the crossfire. Walker had disappeared into the camp. A ghost vanished into chaos. "He sold us out," Langston yelled over the gunfire. "Walker's a double." Understanding crashed over Clarence. The reduced guard count, the interference on their primary frequency. Walker had signaled their approach. This wasn't a rescue mission anymore. It was a fight for survival. "Fall back to position, Bravo," Clarence ordered. providing covering. Fire as Mitchell and Langston retreated. A bullet grazed Clarence's arm, tearing through his sleeve. Another struck his leg, bringing him to one knee. Through gritted teeth he continued firing, buying precious seconds for his remaining men. In the distance, Mitchell screamed. A short, sharp sound cut suddenly silent. Now it was just Clarence and Langston, surrounded and outnumbered. "Go," Clarence told Langston. "I'll hold them off." "Not happening," Langston replied, reloading his rifle. "We go together or not at all." What followed was 3 days of hell. Clarence, despite his wounded leg, carried Langston through the jungle after. Shrapnel from a grenade left him unable to walk. They moved only at night, hiding during daylight hours, evading enemy patrols with the desperation of hunted men. On the 3rd day, they reached the extraction point, a small clearing where a helicopter was supposed to meet them. But instead of salvation, they found emptiness. No helicopter, no rescue. "They've abandoned us," Langston whispered, his face pale from blood loss. Clarence checked his watch. "We're 12 hours past the extraction window. Protocol says they would have cleared out. So we're on our own." "We've always been on our own, James," Clarence said grimly. "Ghost Unit doesn't exist, remember? If we die here, we die as nameless men in a country we're not supposed to be in." But Clarence refused to accept that fate. Using his jungle training and sheer determination, he navigated them to a village he'd marked on his map during the mission. Briefing. There, he bartered his watch and ring for passage across the border, carrying Langston on a makeshift stretcher. 6 days after the ambush, they stumbled into a U.S. military outpost in South Vietnam, half dead but alive. The brightness of the hospital room jarred Nolan Grayson back to the present. He blinked, trying to reconcile the vivid flashback he'd just experienced with the sterile environment of the VA hospital. It wasn't his memory, of course, but after hearing Pops Langston's account and reading Clarence's journal entries, he'd pieced together what must have happened that day in the jungle. Clarence lay in the hospital bed, looking fragile under the white sheets. His eyes were open now, watching Grayson with a mixture of wariness and resignation. "You've been asking questions," Clarence said, his voice stronger than Grayson expected. Grayson nodded. "I've spoken with Langston. Eddie's alive." A flicker of surprise crossed Clarence's weathered face. "After all these years, he's a patient here, 2 floors down." Clarence closed his eyes briefly. "So now you know." "I know parts," Grayson admitted. "I know Ghost Unit 9 existed. I know you were betrayed during a mission. I know the government erased the unit from all records. You don't dig up ghosts without paying a price, Lieutenant," Clarence warned. "Some secrets are buried for a reason. The truth deserves to be known." Clarence gave a bitter laugh. "Truth? The government decided 50 years ago that our truth wasn't convenient. Ghost Unit 9 officially never existed. The missions we ran never happened. The men who died under my command never lived." His trembling hand touched his forearm where the tattoo marked his skin. "All that's left is this. A reminder that I was once part of something that history erased." Grayson pulled a chair closer to the bed. "Tell me what happened after the ambush, after you and Langston made it back." Clarence studied Grayson for a long moment, as if weighing whether to trust him. Finally, he spoke. "We were separated immediately, debriefed individually. They told us the unit had been compromised and was being disbanded. Our records would be altered to show conventional service. Because of Walker? The double agent? That was the official reason," Clarence nodded. "But I think it went deeper. Our final mission, the one that went wrong, we were supposed to extract American POWs from a camp in Laos. But I believe someone high up wanted that mission to fail. Why? Because those prisoners knew something damaging." Clarence's eyes took on a distant look. "There were rumors about a black ops program called Project Dagger, unofficial operation sanctioned by elements within our own government, but without congressional approval. Assassinations, village razings, things that violated the Geneva Convention. And you think these POWs had knowledge of Project Dagger? I think they were part of it, until they became liabilities. Clarence's voice dropped to a whisper. Ghost Unit 9 wasn't created to save them. We were sent in to silence them. Only some of us didn't know that was the real mission. A commotion in the hallway interrupted them. Grayson turned to see a man in an expensive suit speaking with a nurse at the station. The man's posture radiated authority. His eyes cold and assessing as they swept the corridor. Nurse Lisa appeared at Clarence's door, her expression tense. There's a federal agent asking to speak with Mr. Rowe, she said quietly. Says it's a matter of national security. Tell him Mr. Rowe isn't receiving visitors, Grayson replied. Lisa hesitated. He has credentials, Lieutenant. Government clearance that outranks yours. Mr. Rowe is my patient, she continued firmly, and in my medical opinion, he's not stable enough for questioning. She stepped back into the hallway, closing the door behind her. Clarence watched the exchange with knowing eyes. They're still protecting their secrets, he murmured, after all these years. Who's behind this? Follow the chain of command. From our unit, Clarence said. Our CO was Lieutenant Henry Collin. If anyone knows the truth about Project Dagger, it's him. The name sent a jolt through Grayson. Collin, as in Director Robert Collin, who runs this hospital. Clarence's eyes widened slightly. Could be his son, he said quietly. Henry would be in his 80s now if he's still alive. A text message alert chimed on Grayson's phone. It was from his commanding officer. Report to my office immediately. Your file is under review for insubordination. Grayson pocketed his phone, a cold certainty settling in his stomach. Someone doesn't want me asking questions about Ghost Unit 9. Be careful, Lieutenant, Clarence warned. Men have disappeared for less. As Grayson left the room, he saw Lisa arguing with the suited man, her body language defensive and resolute. She was buying him time, but he knew it wouldn't last. That evening, Grayson found Pops Langston sitting alone in the hospital's small garden area, oxygen tank beside his wheelchair. Clarence is alive, Grayson said without preamble. Langston nodded, slowly. I figured you'd tell him about me. How is he? Tired, carrying too many secrets. Aren't we all? Langston sighed. Did he tell you about the mission? The real story? Some of it. He mentioned Project Dagger. Langston's face hardened. That damn project cost American lives. Good men died to keep it secret. What was it exactly? A shadow war. Operations that violated every rule of engagement. Langston's voice dropped to a whisper. We were told we were rescuing POWs. Instead, we were being sent to eliminate witnesses. Only Clarence figured it out before we got there. He refused the order to execute the prisoners. So the ambush was meant to kill us all, Langston confirmed. Clean up the loose ends. Walker was their insurance policy. And afterward, when you and Clarence made it back, they couldn't exactly court-martial us for refusing an illegal order that officially was never given. So they buried everything, disbanded the unit, swore us to silence. His weathered hands gripped the arms of his wheelchair. I kept quiet all these years thinking I was protecting myself, but I was really protecting them, the men who sent us to die. A nurse approached, signaling it was time for Langston to return to his room. As Grayson helped wheel him inside, Langston gripped his arm with surprising strength. Clarence has been carrying a burden all these years, he said urgently. He thinks he left someone behind in that jungle. It haunts him. Who? I don't know, he never told me. But sometimes in the hospital after we got back, he'd wake up screaming a name. Langston's brow furrowed. Marie, I think it was, or Maria. That night, as Grayson drove home, the pieces continued to shift in his mind. Clarence's secret past, Project Dagger, the mysterious woman left behind, and somehow, it all connected to Director Collin, whose father had commanded Ghost Unit 9. In his apartment, Grayson couldn't sleep. He returned to his notes, adding what he'd learned. As he studied the timeline, a realization struck him. The dates in Clarence's journal continued well past the failed mission in 1972. There were entries from 1973, indicating Clarence had been sent on another operation after Ghost Unit 9 was officially disbanded. A solo mission, Pops had said. One Clarence was never expected to return from. Around 3 in the morning, Grayson was startled by sounds from the hallway outside his apartment, footsteps approaching his door, then stopping. He reached for his phone, ready to call security, when a loud crash splintered the silence. His door burst open and 2 masked figures rushed in. Grayson fought back, his military training kicking in, but he was outnumbered. A blow to the head sent him sprawling across the floor. Through blurred vision, he watched as the intruders ransacked his apartment, gathering his notes, Clarence's journal, anything connected to Ghost Unit 9. When they left, Grayson dragged himself to his feet. His apartment was in shambles, but the message was unmistakable. Stop digging. Instead of deterring him, the attack only strengthened his resolve. Whatever secrets Ghost Unit 9 held, they were worth killing for, even 50 years later. Back at the hospital the next morning, Grayson found Clarence in the midst of a breakdown. The old man thrashed in his bed, eyes wide but unseeing, his mind trapped in a nightmare from decades past. "Get down!" Clarence shouted. "They're coming!" "Walker sold us out." Grayson rushed to his side, gently restraining him to prevent him from tearing out his IV. "Clarence, you're safe. You're in the hospital." "The jungle. We can't leave them behind." Clarence's eyes were wild with remembered terror. "Maria, I promised Maria." "Who's Maria, Clarence?" Grayson asked, keeping his voice calm. "Who did you leave behind?" Clarence's struggles weakened as exhaustion overtook him. Tears streaked down his weathered face. "I left someone behind," he whispered. "God forgive me. I left someone behind." Director Robert Collins' office exuded military precision. Awards and commendations displayed in perfect alignment. Desk, clear of unnecessary items, American flag standing proudly in the corner. The man himself, in his early 50s with steel gray hair and a rigid posture, regarded Grayson with cool assessment. "Lieutenant Grayson," he said, not offering to shake hands. "I understand you've been making inquiries about a patient, Clarence Rowe." Grayson remained standing, matching Collins' formality. "Yes, sir, as part of my administrative duties." "Your duties don't include accessing classified military records or harassing an elderly veteran with questions about operations that never existed." Grayson chose his next words carefully. "With respect, sir, I believe Ghost Unit 9 did exist, and I believe your father was its commanding officer." A flicker of something. Surprise? Anger? Crossed Collins' face before his expression smoothed back to professional detachment. "My father served honorably in Vietnam, Lieutenant. His record is unblemished." "Because the real record was erased," Grayson countered, "along with any mention of Project Dagger." At the mention of Project Dagger, Collins' composure slipped. He stood abruptly, leaning across his desk. "You're stepping into dangerous territory, Lieutenant. Conspiracy theories about Black Ops programs can destroy a promising military career." "This isn't about my career, sir. It's about the truth." "The truth," Colin repeated with a humorless laugh. "The truth is that old men sometimes invent stories to make themselves feel important. Clarence Rowe was a supply clerk who never saw combat. His delusions of grandeur don't merit investigation." "Then why is his file classified at the highest level? Why did 2 men break into my apartment last night to steal my notes about him?" Collins' expression hardened. "I suggest you file a police report about the break-in. As for Rowe's file, many veterans' records contain sensitive information. Now I believe we're done here." "One more question, sir," Grayson said, not moving. "Does the name Maria mean anything to you?" For just an instant, Collins' mask slipped completely. Fear, raw and unmistakable, flashed in his eyes before he recovered. "Get out of my office, Lieutenant, and consider yourself warned. Pursue this matter further, and I'll have you transferred to the most remote outpost the military operates." As Grayson left, the threat hung in the air. But he'd seen Collins' reaction. Maria was the key to unlocking whatever secret Ghost Unit 9 had died to protect. In the hospital corridor, he nearly collided with Lisa, who pulled him quickly into an empty room. "I found something," she whispered, producing a small cassette tape. It was hidden in the lining of Clarence's coat. I was cleaning it for him and felt something hard inside a seam. Grayson took the tape, turning it over in his hands. On one side, written in faded ink, Final Testament, CR. "We need to find a cassette player," he said. "Already ahead of you." Lisa produced a dusty Walkman from her pocket. "From the children's ward. They keep old tech for the therapy room." They huddled together as Lisa inserted the tape and pressed play. After a moment of scratchy silence, Clarence's voice emerged. Younger, stronger, but unmistakable. "If you're hearing this, I probably didn't make it. My name is Lieutenant Clarence Rowe, U.S. Army, service number 54897-321. I was the field commander of Special Operations Unit designated Ghost Unit 9. Grayson and Lisa exchanged glances as the recording continued. What I'm about to disclose will be classified as treason, but the American people deserve to know the truth. In 1972, our unit was sent to extract American prisoners from a camp in Laos, a country where we officially had no operations. Upon arrival, I discovered these weren't just POWs. They were participants in Project Dagger, a Black Ops program, conducting unauthorized psychological experimentation on Vietnamese civilians. Clarence's recorded voice grew tight with controlled anger. When I refused to execute the prisoners as ordered by Lieutenant Henry Collin, our unit was betrayed by a planted operative. Most of my men died in the ambush. Only myself and Specialist James Langston survived. A long pause filled with the sound of deep breathing. After our return, Ghost Unit 9 was officially erased. But that wasn't the end. In 1973, I was approached for one final mission, a chance to redeem myself, they said. Extract a high-value asset from deep cover in North Vietnam. Her codename was Nightingale, but I knew her as Maria Thao, an American Vietnamese operative who'd provided intelligence on Project Dagger. The recording crackled with static before continuing. I found her, but during extraction, we were compromised. Maria was captured. I escaped with evidence of Project Dagger's atrocities, documents that implicated high-ranking officials, including Lieutenant Collin. When I returned to present this evidence, I was detained as a traitor. The documents disappeared. I was given a choice: accept a dishonorable discharge with a fabricated file, or face execution for treason. Clarence's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I took the discharge, believing I could still expose the truth. But they were always one step ahead, discrediting me, monitoring me, ensuring no one would believe the ramblings of a disgraced veteran. Now, 50 years later, I'm still carrying the burden of those left behind. Maria Thao deserved better. My men deserved better. This tape is my final testimony. May someone braver than me bring it to light. The recording ended with a click, leaving Grayson and Lisa in stunned silence. "We need to make a copy," Grayson finally said. "Multiple copies." "I know someone who can help," Lisa replied. "My cousin works at the Tribune. She's a journalist, retired now, but she still has connections." "Is she trustworthy? With something like this?" "Absolutely." That evening, as darkness settled over the city, Grayson met with Elaine Wilson, Lisa's cousin, in a quiet corner of a local diner. In her 60s with sharp eyes and an air of no-nonsense efficiency, Elaine had spent 40 years chasing stories others were afraid to touch. "This is dynamite," she said after listening to the tape. "If it's authentic, and I have ways to verify that, it could expose one of the biggest military cover-ups since the Pentagon Papers." "It's authentic," Grayson assured her. "And there's more. The man who ordered the cover-up, Lieutenant Henry Collin, is the father of the current VA hospital director." Elaine's eyes widened. "Robert Collin? The man's practically a pillar of the community, built on a foundation of lies," Grayson said grimly. "His father sent men to die to protect Project Dagger, then erase them from history when they survived." "I'll need more than just this tape," Elaine warned. "Corroborating evidence, additional testimonies if possible." "Langston, James Langston, is still alive. He was there." "Good. And I'll need to verify Clarence's identity, confirm the existence of this Maria Thao person." Elaine's reporter instincts were clearly engaged. "This could take time to build properly." "We may not have time," Grayson warned. Someone broke into my apartment last night. They're already trying to silence this story. Back at the hospital, Grayson found Clarence's condition had deteriorated. His heart monitor showed irregular patterns, and his breathing was labored. The stress is taking a toll, Lisa explained quietly. His body can't keep up with the emotional strain. As Grayson sat beside Clarence's bed, the old man's eyes fluttered open. Recognition dawned slowly in his gaze. "Lieutenant," he whispered. "Did you listen to it?" "Yes," Grayson confirmed. "We're going to break the story, Clarence. The truth about Ghost Unit 9, about Project Dagger, all of it." A shadow crossed Clarence's face. "Maria. Did I mention Maria?" "You did. We're trying to find information about her." "She had a child," Clarence said, his voice strengthening momentarily. "My child, born after I was discharged." The revelation hit Grayson like a physical blow. "You have a child?" "The baby was taken from her, adopted out through federal channels." Tears welled in Clarence's eyes. "I searched for years, but the records were sealed. My own flesh and blood, erased just like my service." A commotion in the hallway drew Grayson's attention. Raised voices, the shuffle of multiple footsteps. The door burst open to reveal Director Colin, flanked by 2 hospital security guards and a woman in a business suit. "Lieutenant Grayson," Colin said coldly, "you're trespassing on federal property. These officers will escort you out." "This is a hospital, not a military installation," Grayson replied, standing his ground. "Mr. Rowe's case has been flagged for national security concerns," the woman in the suit interjected. "I'm Agent Peterson, Department of Defense. This room is now restricted." Lisa pushed past them, positioning herself between the group and Clarence's bed. "This man is my patient, and he's in critical condition. Any stress could trigger cardiac arrest." "Nurse Thompson," Colin's voice was ice. "You're relieved of duty pending review. Report to HR immediately." "I will not abandon my patient," Lisa said firmly. "Then you'll be escorted out as well." Colin nodded to the security guards. As tensions escalated, Clarence's monitor began beeping more rapidly. His eyes were wide, darting between the figures confronting each other in his room. "Stop," he gasped, his voice barely audible. "Please." The monitors screamed as Clarence's vitals spiked. Medical staff rushed in, pushing past Colin and the security team. In the chaos, Grayson slipped out, pulling Lisa with him. "We need to move fast," he told her once they were clear of the commotion. "They're locking this down." "What about Clarence?" "They won't let us near him now. Our best chance to help him is to expose the truth." In the hospital parking lot, Grayson's phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your mailbox. Nightingale sends regards." Hours later, standing in his apartment with the door hastily repaired, Grayson stared at the contents of the manila envelope that had been left in his mailbox. Inside was a single photograph, a much younger Clarence in uniform, holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. Beside him stood a Vietnamese woman wearing a butterfly pendant necklace. On the back, written in faded ink, "Clarence, Maria, and Danielle, September 1974. "Danielle," Grayson whispered. Clarence's daughter had a name. Lisa looked over his shoulder at the photo. She'd be around 50 now. "And she has no idea who her father is," Grayson said, "or what he sacrificed. We have to find her. We will." Grayson carefully placed the photo on the table beside his notes, the few the intruders hadn't taken. For Clarence, for Ghost Unit 9, for everyone whose legacy they tried to erase. Outside his window, a black SUV sat parked across the street, a silent reminder that powerful people wanted this story buried. But some truths refused to stay hidden, especially when they were marked permanently in ink, like the tattoo on an old soldier's forearm. Morning light filtered through the blinds of Grayson's apartment as he and Lisa hunched over the photograph. The image of Clarence holding the infant standing beside the Vietnamese woman with the butterfly pendant had consumed their attention for hours. "Look at the detail on the pendant," Lisa said, using a magnifying glass to examine the necklace. "It's not just any butterfly. It has these distinctive markings." Grayson leaned closer, The pendant featured a blue morpho butterfly with unusual silver filigree around the edges. "It's custom-made," he noted. "One of a kind, possibly." "Wait." Lisa's eyes widened. "I've seen this before." "Where?" "At the hospital." She closed her eyes, concentrating. "A patient, maybe 3 months ago. She was wearing a necklace just like this. I remember commenting on it because it was so unique." "Do you remember her name?" Lisa shook her head. "She wasn't my regular patient. I just filled in for someone on her floor one day." She grabbed her phone. "But I can check the rotation schedules. If I can pinpoint which day I was covering that floor, I might be able to narrow down who she was." While Lisa searched through her calendar, Grayson studied the photo again. Maria Thau's face was partially turned toward Clarence, her expression a mixture of joy and something else, fear perhaps. The photo had been taken in haste, a stolen moment before. Before what? "Here," Lisa said triumphantly. "February 18th. I covered for Judith on the 4th floor, behavioral health wing." "Behavioral health? That's where they treat PTSD, depression. And it's where our staff therapists have their offices," Lisa added. "Let me check who was admitted that day." After several minutes of scrolling through her phone, Lisa's expression fell. "Too many names, and I can't access full patient records from here." "What about staff? Who works on that floor?" Lisa's fingers flew across her phone screen. "There's Dr. Reynolds, Dr. Williams, Dr. Farley, and Dr. Collins. She transferred in about 8 months ago." "Collins?" Grayson's head snapped up. "Any relation to Director Robert Collins?" "I don't know. It's not an uncommon name." "What's her first name?" Lisa squinted at her phone. "Danielle. Dr. Danielle Collins." The revelation hung in the air between them. Danielle. The same name written on the back of the photograph. "It can't be coincidence," Grayson finally said. "Clarence's daughter was named Danielle. She'd be about 50 now, which matches the age range for a practicing therapist. And she's working at the same hospital as her biological father?" "And Director Collins," Lisa added. "If he's related to the Lieutenant Collins who betrayed Ghost Unit 9, then Clarence's daughter is working alongside the son of the man who tried to have her father killed." Grayson ran a hand through his hair. "She must have no idea." "How do we approach her?" Lisa asked. "We can't just walk up and say, 'Hey, your boss's father tried to murder your biological father who's currently a patient here.'" "No," Grayson agreed. "We need to be careful. If she's been adopted through federal channels like Clarence said, she might not even know she's adopted." They devised a plan. Grayson would schedule a therapy appointment with Dr. Collins, claiming to need support dealing with stress from his administrative position. During the session, he would carefully gauge what she knew about her past before deciding how much to reveal. 2 days later, Grayson sat in the waiting area outside Dr. Collins's office. The behavioral health wing was quieter than the rest of the hospital, with soft lighting and comfortable furniture designed to put patients at ease. A woman in her early 50s emerged from the office, closing the door behind her. "Lieutenant Grayson?" she asked with a professional smile. "I'm Dr. Collins. Please come in." As she turned to lead the way, Grayson caught a glimpse of something around her neck, a thin silver chain disappearing beneath her blouse. His pulse quickened. Dr. Collins' office was warmly decorated with landscape paintings and plants. She gestured toward a comfortable chair across from hers. "So, Lieutenant, what brings you in today?" Grayson had prepared for this moment, crafting a story that was truthful enough to be convincing, while allowing him to steer the conversation where he needed it to go. "I've been experiencing some stress related to my administrative position here," he began. "I've encountered situations that challenge my understanding of military history and ethics." Dr. Collins nodded encouragingly. "Many veterans struggle with reconciling their personal experiences against official narratives. Can you elaborate on what you're experiencing?" Over the next 20 minutes, Grayson carefully described his feelings about discovering discrepancies in military records, without specifically mentioning Ghost Unit 9 or Clarence. Dr. Collins listened attentively, occasionally making notes. "It Sounds like you're grappling with questions of institutional truth versus personal truth, she observed. That's actually a subject I've studied extensively. My doctoral thesis examined the psychological impact of classified operations on veterans. What drew you to that particular subject? Grayson asked, sensing an opening. A shadow crossed Dr. Collins's face. Personal interest, I suppose. My adoptive father worked for the Department of Defense. The secrecy that surrounded his work affected our family dynamics significantly. You're adopted? Grayson kept his tone casual, though his heart was racing. Doctor. Collins hesitated before nodding. Yes, though I didn't discover that until I was in college. My parents were selective with the truth. That must have been difficult to process. It was life-changing, she admitted. Finding out your entire identity is built on partial information. She trailed off, then seemed to catch herself. I apologize. This session is about you, not me. No, it's relevant, Grayson assured her. Have you ever looked into your biological parents? The question hung in the air. Dr. Collins studied him with suddenly suspicious eyes. Lieutenant Grayson, these questions seem rather personal and unrelated to your stated reason for seeking therapy. Grayson made a split-second decision. Dr. Collins, I believe your biological father is currently a patient in this hospital. Her expression froze. Excuse me? His name is Clarence Rowe. He's 84 years old and he's been searching for you for decades. Dr. Collins stood abruptly, her professional demeanor cracking. This is completely inappropriate. I don't know what kind of game you're playing. It's not a game, Grayson said, pulling the photograph from his pocket and placing it on her desk. This is you, as a baby, with your biological parents. Her hand trembled as she picked up the photograph. For several long moments, she stared at the image, her breathing shallow. When she finally looked up, her eyes were filled with conflicting emotions. Where did you get this? It was delivered to me after I started investigating your father's military service, Grayson explained. Dr. Collins, there's so much more you need to know. About your father, about why you were separated from your parents. My adoptive parents told me my biological mother was Vietnamese, she said quietly. They claimed my biological father was unknown. My adoption records were mostly redacted, a closed federal adoption. Her hand moved unconsciously to her neck, pulling out the necklace that had been hidden beneath her blouse, a blue butterfly pendant identical to the one in the photograph. My mother gave me this, she whispered. My adoptive mother. She said it came with me when I was adopted. It belonged to your biological mother, Grayson confirmed. Maria Thau. Dr. Collins sank back into her chair. This is overwhelming. You're telling me my biological father has been here in this hospital while I've been working here for months? Yes. And there's more, but it's complicated and potentially dangerous. Your father was part of a classified military unit during Vietnam. His service was erased from official records as part of a cover-up. What unit? Her voice had regained some of its professional steadiness, though her hands still trembled. Ghost Unit 9. Have you ever heard that name? She shook her head. Never. There's something else you should know, Grayson continued carefully. The cover-up that erased your father's service was ordered by Lieutenant Henry Collins. Collins? Her eyes widened. Like my adopted name? He was Director Robert Collins' father. The blood drained from her face. Director Collins, my boss, is connected to this? We believe so, yes. Dr. Collins stared at the photograph again, her finger tracing the outline of her infant self in Clarence's arms. I need to see him, she said finally. My father. I need to see him now. That might be difficult, Grayson warned. Director Collins has restricted access to his room, claiming national security concerns. I don't care, she said, rising from her chair with newfound determination. I've spent my entire life with questions about where I came from. I'm not waiting another day for answers. As they left her office, Grayson texted Lisa. She knows. We're coming to see Clarence. Lisa's response was immediate. Security increased. Collins ordered full restriction, working on alternate access. In the elevator, Dr. Collins, Danielle, turned to Grayson. You said there's more to this story. What aren't you telling me? Your father was betrayed by his commanding officer. During a mission in Laos, Grayson explained quietly. Most of his unit was killed. When he returned with evidence of illegal operations called Project Dagger, he was silenced and discharged. Your mother was captured during a separate extraction attempt. My mother, Danielle's voice caught. Is she still alive? We don't know, Grayson admitted. Clarence has been searching for both of you for decades. When they reached Clarence's floor, 2 security guards stood outside his room. Lisa was waiting by the nurse's station, her expression tense. They won't let anyone in without Director Collins's express permission, she whispered when they approached. Clarence's condition has stabilized, but he's still weak. Danielle stepped forward, her professional authority evident in her bearing. I'm Dr. Collins, head of behavioral health. This patient requires psychological evaluation. The guards exchanged glances. Sorry, doctor, we have strict orders. No one enters without Director Collins' approval, specifically including hospital staff. He's my father, Danielle said, her voice breaking. Please. The guards' expressions remained impassive. We have our orders, ma'am. Defeated, they retreated to a nearby consultation room. Danielle paced the small space, the photograph clutched in her hand. There has to be another way, she insisted. Lisa's phone chimed with a text. She read it and looked up with renewed hope. There might be. Eddie Langston, Pops, says there's an old maintenance tunnel beneath the hospital. It was used during renovations years ago. Where is it? Grayson asked. Basement level, behind the old physical therapy room. They formulated a plan. Lisa would escort Danielle to the basement, while Grayson created a distraction on Clarence's floor. With security diverted, Lisa would guide Danielle through the tunnel to a service elevator that accessed the floor directly behind where Clarence was being kept. As they prepared to put their plan into action, Grayson received a call from Elaine Wilson, the journalist. I've verified some of Clarence's story, she said without preamble. I found military transport records that place him in Thailand in 1972, despite his official file showing him stationed in Germany at the time. And I located another veteran who confirmed the existence of Ghost Unit 9. We need to move faster, Grayson told her. The hospital administration is locking everything down. Clarence's condition is deteriorating and we've found his daughter. His daughter? Elaine's voice sharpened with interest. That's a new angle. I'm preparing to publish what I have so far. A preliminary report laying out the basic allegations. Do it, Grayson urged. The more public this becomes, the harder it will be for them to keep it buried. Elaine promised to have the initial story online within hours. Meanwhile, Grayson put their plan into motion, deliberately triggering a minor medical emergency on the opposite end of Clarence's floor by setting off an equipment alarm. As security responded, Lisa and Danielle made their way through the maintenance tunnel, navigating the dimly lit passageway with the help of their phone flashlights. The tunnel was narrow and dusty, clearly unused for years. Pipes ran along the ceiling, occasionally dripping condensation onto the concrete floor. After what seemed like an eternity, they reached a service door that led to a back stairwell. We're directly behind the east wing, Lisa whispered. Clarence's room is 2 floors up at the end of the hall. They climbed the stairs silently, encountering no one. The service areas of the hospital were largely automated now, with minimal staff presence. At Clarence's floor, Lisa carefully opened the door a crack, peering into the hallway. Clear, she murmured. The guards are still at the front of his room. They slipped into the hallway and moved quickly to the room adjacent to Clarence's, a supply closet. From there, Lisa led them through a connecting bathroom that served both rooms. Finally, they entered Clarence's room from the back entrance. The old soldier lay still in his bed, eyes closed. The steady beep of his heart monitored the only sound. Danielle froze in the doorway, overwhelmed by the moment. Dad? She whispered, the word foreign on her tongue. Clarence's eyes fluttered open. He stared at Danielle in confusion, then recognition slowly dawned in his gaze. His trembling hand reached toward her. "You found me," he said, his voice barely audible. "After all these years." Danielle moved to his bedside, taking his weathered hand in hers. Tears streamed down her face as she studied the man who had given her life, a stranger until this moment, yet connected to her by blood and a history she was only beginning to understand. "I didn't know," she told him. "They never told me who you were. I didn't even know you were looking for me." "Every day," Clarence whispered. "I searched for you every day until the trail went cold." His eyes moved to the butterfly pendant around her neck. "Maria's necklace. She would be so happy to see you wearing it." "My mother," Danielle began. "She was incredible," Clarence said, a spark of life returning to his eyes as he spoke of Maria. "Brilliant, brave. She infiltrated Project Dagger to expose their crimes." "What happened to her?" Clarence's expression clouded with pain. "We were ambushed during extraction. I got away, but Maria was captured. By the time I arranged another rescue attempt, she'd been moved. The official report said she died in custody, but I never believed it. Why? Because 3 years later you arrived at an adoption agency. Someone got you out, which means Maria must have survived long enough to give birth to you." His grip on Danielle's hand tightened. "I've always believed she might still be alive." The door to the hallway burst open, revealing Director Collins flanked by security guards. His face contorted with anger when he saw Danielle at Clarence's bedside. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "This area is restricted." "She has every right to be here," Lisa said firmly. "She's his daughter." Collins's eyes darted between Clarence and Danielle, recognition and calculation evident in his gaze. "Dr. Collins, you've been misled by these people. This man is delusional. A disgrace to the uniform who was discharged for insubordination." "That's a lie," Danielle replied, not moving from Clarence's side. "I've seen the proof. I know about Ghost Unit 9 and Project Dagger. I know what your father did." Collins's facade cracked momentarily before he regained his composure. "Security. Remove these people immediately." As the guards moved forward, Grayson stepped into the room from the bathroom entrance. "It's too late for that, Director. The story's already breaking. Elaine Wilson at the Tribune is publishing the first report as we speak." Collins's phone rang, as if on cue. He answered it, listening intently as his expression darkened. "How the hell did they get this information?" he snapped before ending the call. "It's over," Grayson said. "The truth about Ghost Unit 9 is coming out." Elaine Wilson's preliminary report hit the internet that evening. The ghost soldier they tried to erase. A carefully worded expose that outlined the existence of Ghost Unit 9 and the betrayal that had nearly wiped them out. Though light on specifics to protect her sources, the article included enough verifiable details to lend credibility to the allegations. By morning, the story had been picked up by several major news outlets. Veterans groups across the country began sharing the article, many adding their own stories of classified operations and altered records. In his apartment, Grayson found the front door kicked in for the second time that week. This time, however, the damage was more extensive. His furniture had been slashed, electronics smashed, and walls defaced with a clear message: "Traitors die." His phone rang, Lisa calling to warn him that her car's tires had been slashed in the hospital parking lot. "They left a note under my windshield," she said, her voice shaking. "It said stop digging or start digging graves." Danielle, too, had been targeted. Her work credentials had been flagged in the system for a security breach, effectively locking her out of the hospital's network and patient files. When she called to protest, the HR department claimed the ISA order had come directly from the Department of Defense. "They're escalating," Grayson told Lisa and Danielle when they met at a coffee shop far from the hospital. "Which means we're getting close to something they desperately want to keep hidden." "My father's condition is declining," Danielle said, her voice tight with worry. "The nurses say he had another episode last night. He keeps asking for me, but they won't let me in." "We need to move faster," Grayson decided. "Elaine's article, is a good start, but we need more concrete evidence. Clarence's recorded testimony is powerful, but it's still one man's word. What about Pops Langston? Lisa suggested. He was there too. I've been thinking about that, Grayson said. If we could get multiple Ghost Unit survivors to corroborate Clarence's story. But they've all been silenced or disappeared, Danielle pointed out. Not necessarily, Grayson countered. Pops and Clarence survived. There might be others who've been keeping quiet all these years, afraid to come forward alone. Later that day, Elaine called with unexpected news. My inbox is flooded, she said, excitement evident in her voice. Veterans from across the country are reaching out, some claiming to have served with Ghost Unit 9, others saying they encountered the unit during operations in Southeast Asia. Can they be verified? Grayson asked. I'm working on it. But one email stands out, from a William Foster in Oregon. He claims he was Ghost Unit's communications specialist. He included details about their equipment and protocols that match what we know. Mitchell, Grayson realized. David Mitchell. Clarence mentioned him in his journal, said he was the unit's comms guy. Foster says he survived the ambush but was separated from Clarence and Langston. When he made it back to base independently, he was immediately reassigned and sworn to secrecy. This was the corroboration they needed. Independent verification of Clarence's account from another survivor. Elaine arranged a secure video call with Foster, who had agreed to go on record. The man who appeared on screen was in his 70s, with sharp eyes and a military bearing that decades of civilian life hadn't erased. He confirmed everything Clarence had described: the betrayal by Walker, the ambush, the cover-up upon their return. They threatened my family, Foster explained. Said my wife and kids would disappear if I ever spoke about Ghost Unit 9. So I kept quiet, changed my name, moved across the country. But I never forgot. Why come forward now? Elaine asked. Because I'm dying, Foster replied matter-of-factly. Cancer. 6 months, maybe less. And I'm tired of carrying these secrets to protect men who betrayed their country and their oath. Foster agreed to provide a sworn statement and any documentation he had preserved from that time. With each passing hour, more evidence accumulated, and more veterans came forward with pieces of the puzzle. Meanwhile, Director Collins held a hastily arranged press conference at the hospital. Standing before a bank of microphones, he dismissed the allegations as a disrespectful conspiracy theory aimed at undermining veterans' institutions. Clarence Rowe was discharged for insubordination and instability, Collins stated firmly. His fabricated stories about secret units and government. Conspiracies are the sad delusions of an aging veteran seeking attention, but his confident facade cracked when a reporter asked about his father's role in commanding Ghost Unit 9. Collins abruptly ended the press conference, refusing to take further questions. Back at the coffee shop, Grayson received a text from a lab technician at the hospital. A friend of Lisa's who had secretly processed a DNA comparison between Clarence and Danielle, using samples Lisa had collected. Results confirmed, the text read. 99.9% match. She is definitely his daughter. Danielle broke down in tears when Grayson shared the news. All these years, she whispered. All these years, wondering where I came from, who I was. And he was right there, searching for me. As darkness fell, they gathered at Elaine's apartment to plan their next move. The journalist had published a follow-up piece featuring Foster's testimony and corroborating statements from other veterans. The story was gaining traction nationally, with calls for a congressional investigation into the alleged cover-up. Director Collins is on the defensive, Elaine reported. His superiors at the VA administration are distancing themselves, claiming no knowledge of any restriction of Clarence's records. What about access to Clarence? Danielle asked. I need to see him again. Still restricted, Lisa said, but there might be another way. She explained that Eddie Langston, Pops, knew of another entrance to the maintenance tunnel, one that hadn't been sealed completely. It's riskier, she warned. Security will be watching for us now. I don't care, Danielle insisted. If his condition is deteriorating, I need to be with him while I still can. They devised a plan to enter the hospital that night, using the alternate tunnel entrance. Elaine would accompany them, determined to document the reunion for her next article. Grayson would lead, with Lisa guiding them through the hospital's back corridors. The tunnel entrance was hidden behind a dumpster in the hospital's rear parking lot. The access door was chained shut, but the hinges were corroded enough that they could pry it open with sufficient force. Inside, the passage was narrower than the one they'd used before, forcing them to proceed in single file. The journey through the darkness was tense, each sound magnified in the enclosed space. After 20 minutes of careful navigation, they reached a utility room that connected to the hospital's main basement. From there, they used service elevators and back stairwells to approach Clarence's floor. Security had been increased. Guards patrolled the corridors at regular intervals. Lisa timed their movements, guiding the group between rotations. Finally, they reached the back entrance to Clarence's room. Inside, the lights were dimmed. Clarence lay still, his breathing labored, the monitors beside his bed displaying concerning, vital signs. Danielle rushed to his side, taking his hand in hers. "Dad," she whispered, "I'm here. I found you." Clarence's eyes fluttered open. Recognition dawned slowly, followed by a smile that transformed his weathered face. "Danielle," he breathed. "My daughter." As Danielle spoke softly to her father, telling him about her life, her career, her search for identity, Elaine discreetly captured the moment with her phone's camera. The image of Danielle holding Clarence's hand, the butterfly pendant gleaming at her throat, would become the defining symbol of their story. Clarence's voice was weak but determined as he shared fragments of memories, Maria's courage, his search for Danielle, his fight to expose the truth about Project Dagger. Though his body was failing, his mind remained sharp, filled with details he'd carried for 5 decades. "They tried to erase us," he told Danielle, "but they couldn't erase the truth. It was always there, waiting to be found." As they talked, Clarence's heart monitor showed a strengthening pulse, as if the reunion with his daughter had given him renewed life force. For the first time in years, the burden of his secrets had been lifted. His legacy, so long denied, was finally being acknowledged. Outside the hospital, across the nation, the story of Ghost Unit 9 continued to spread. Veterans came forward with their own testimonies, journalists dug into classified archives, and politicians began calling for formal investigations. The shadows that had concealed the truth for 50 years were receding, exposing the men who had orchestrated the cover-up to the harsh light of public scrutiny. The ghost soldiers were emerging from the darkness at last. "We're going live in 30 minutes, Elaine Wilson announced, adjusting her webcam while her technical team set up the streaming equipment in her apartment. The veteran journalist had pulled an all-nighter preparing for what she called the Ghost Files, a multi-part investigative livestream revealing the full story of Ghost Unit 9, Project Dagger, and the decades-long cover-up. Grayson, Lisa, and Danielle huddled around her laptop, reviewing the material one final time. The evidence they had gathered was substantial. Clarence's audio testimony, William Foster's sworn statement, corroborating accounts from a dozen other veterans, redacted documents obtained through Freedom of Information requests, and historical photographs that placed Ghost Unit members in locations they officially never visited. "Once we broadcast this, there's no going back," Elaine warned. "The blowback will be immediate and severe." "We've already passed the point of no return," Grayson replied. "They know what we have. They've tried to silence us. Our only protection now is to get the truth into the public domain." Danielle nodded, her expression resolute. She'd spent the ITO night at the hospital with Clarence, talking, listening, filling in the blanks of both their lives. The connection between them had formed instantly, as if their shared blood recognized its own despite the decades of separation. "My father has carried this burden alone for 50 years, she said. "It's time the world knew what happened to Ghost Unit 9. The livestream began at precisely 8 a.m., prime time for maximum viewership. Elaine introduced the investigation with the steady professionalism of a journalist who had spent decades honing her craft. The story unfolded methodically, backed by evidence and testimony, each revelation more damning than the last. Halfway through the broadcast, Elaine introduced their first surprise guest, William Foster, appearing via video link from his home in Oregon. The elderly veteran spoke with quiet dignity about the missions of Ghost Unit 9, the betrayal by Walker, and the government's subsequent erasure of their service. "We were told our silence was protecting national security," Foster explained. "But we were really protecting powerful men who had violated the laws of war and wanted to avoid accountability." As Foster spoke, the livestream's viewer count climbed rapidly. Social media erupted with discussions about Ghost Unit 9, with the hashtag #Justice for Ghost Unit trending within the first hour. Their second surprise guest caused an even greater sensation. General Thomas Richards, retired, former deputy commander of special operations during the late 1970s, appeared on screen. A stern-faced man in his 90s whose reputation for integrity remained unblemished. "I became aware of Project Dagger and the Ghost Unit 9 cover-up in 1978, he stated, his voice still commanding despite his age. "By then, the operation had been scrubbed from official records. When I tried to investigate, I was warned to drop it or face consequences. It was the only time in my 40-year military career that I was ordered to look the other way." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "What happened to those men was a betrayal of everything our military stands for." The general's testimony lent undeniable credibility to their case. As a highly decorated officer with an impeccable service record, his words carried weight that couldn't be easily dismissed. Then came the most devastating revelation. A whistleblower from within the Department of Defense, speaking anonymously with their voice disguised, confirmed that Director Robert Collins had actively participated in suppressing information about Ghost Unit 9 to protect his father's reputation. Lieutenant Henry Collins wasn't just the commanding officer who gave the betrayal order, the whistleblower revealed. He was one of the architects of Project Dagger. When Clarence Rowe returned with evidence that could have exposed the program, Collins orchestrated the cover-up and tried to frame Rowe for desertion. The livestream continued for 3 hours, methodically dismantling 50 years of lies. By the time Elaine introduced Danielle to speak about finding her father, the story had been picked up by major news networks. Phones at the Pentagon, the VA administration, and congressional offices were ringing non-stop as journalists sought official responses. Danielle spoke from the heart about discovering her true identity and the bittersweet reunion with the father she'd never known. "He was erased twice," she said, her voice steady despite her emotion. "Once as a soldier, when his service was denied, and again as a father, when I was taken from him. But the truth couldn't remain buried forever." As the broadcast concluded, Elaine announced that all documentation and testimony had been uploaded to a secure server and distributed to journalists across the country, ensuring that the story couldn't be suppressed even if they faced retaliation. Within hours, the impact was seismic. Veterans organizations demanded a full investigation. Military historians began revising their accounts of covert operations during Vietnam. Congressional representatives called for emergency hearings to address the allegations. At the Jefferson County VA Hospital, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Director Collins had vanished, his office dark, his phone unanswered. Meanwhile, Clarence had become something of a celebrity among the staff and patients. Veterans who had previously mocked or dismissed him now approached his room with reverence, many leaving small tokens of respect outside his door when they couldn't gain entry. By evening, 3 retired generals had come forward to confirm the existence of Ghost Unit 9, one stating bluntly on national television. Clarence Rowe was the reason any of them made it back. His leadership under fire was exemplary, and the subsequent treatment he received was a disgrace to our nation's military. As public pressure mounted, a whistleblower within the Pentagon released classified documents confirming that Director Collins's father, Lieutenant Henry Collins, had indeed given the order to abandon American POWs who had knowledge of Project Dagger. The paper trail led directly to the highest levels of military command during that era, implicating officials who had gone on to illustrious post-war careers. Danielle, overwhelmed by the rapid developments but determined to advocate for her father, wrote an open letter that was published on Elaine's news site. "My father was erased by the country he saved." The piece was deeply personal, detailing Clarence's decades-long search for his daughter, and his unwavering commitment to exposing the truth despite threats and intimidation. He didn't fight for recognition or medals, she wrote. He fought because truth and honor demanded nothing less. The men who tried to silence him feared exposure more than they valued the lives of their own soldiers. The letter went viral, shared hundreds of thousands of times across social media platforms. Readers responded with an outpouring of support, many sharing stories of their own family members whose military service had been obscured or denied. As pressure continued to build, the VA administration called an emergency board meeting. Grayson and Lisa were summoned to testify about the restrictions placed on Clarence's file and the intimidation they had faced when investigating his case. Elaine attended as a media representative, broadcasting the proceedings to her growing audience. During the hearing, Elaine played Clarence's complete audio testimony. His calm, detailed description of saving 17 POWs single-handedly after the rest of his unit had been killed or separated. The room fell silent as his voice described carrying wounded men through hostile territory, evading capture for 14 days with minimal supplies, and ultimately delivering the prisoners to safety, despite his own severe injuries. I did my duty, Clarence's recorded voice stated simply, and for that, they erased me. The national uproar that followed was unprecedented. Veterans and civilians alike began wearing butterfly pins on their clothing, replicating the pendant that connected Maria to Danielle, as a symbol of solidarity with Ghost Unit 9 and all service members whose contributions had been denied or diminished. The movement gained such momentum that within days, the White House issued a statement announcing that the president had directed his staff to arrange a meeting with Danielle and Grayson to discuss corrective actions regarding Clarence Rowe's service record and the broader implications of the Ghost Unit 9 revelation. Throughout the whirlwind of media attention and political maneuvering, Danielle remained at Clarence's bedside as much as possible. His condition fluctuated, moments of clarity and energy followed by periods of exhaustion and confusion. The doctors warned that the emotional strain of recent events, while invigorating in some ways, was taxing his already fragile system. One evening, as Danielle sat beside him reading aloud from newspaper accounts of the growing Ghost Unit 9 investigation, Clarence suddenly asked her to stop. "Sing to me," he requested softly. "Your mother used to sing when she was nervous or happy." Said it settled her soul. "I don't know what she sang," Danielle admitted. "Anything," Clarence said. "I just want to hear my daughter's voice not talking about war for a change." Danielle hesitated, then began singing a lullaby her adoptive mother had often hummed to her as a child. A gentle melody about butterflies finding their way home. As she sang, Clarence's eyes opened fully for the first time in days. He reached for her hand, held it with surprising strength, and managed a smile that transformed his weathered face. "You have her eyes," he whispered. "When you sing, I can see her again." That night, with Danielle holding one hand and Lisa the other, Clarence Rowe's long battle came to a peaceful end. His heart, which had endured so much, finally slowed and then stopped. The monitor flatlined a final full stop to a life of extraordinary courage. As his last breath left him, Danielle gently placed her butterfly pendant on his chest. A final connection between father, mother, and daughter. Arlington National Cemetery stretched before them, row upon row of white headstones honoring America's fallen heroes. On a crisp autumn morning 3 months after Clarence's death, thousands gathered to witness his interment with full military honors, a ceremony that would have been unimaginable just months earlier. The president had issued a posthumous commendation acknowledging Clarence's extraordinary service and the injustice of its erasure. Congress had passed a formal motion to officially recognize Ghost Unit 9 and all undocumented Black Ops soldiers, whose contributions had been deliberately obscured. Danielle stood at the gravesite in a simple black dress, the butterfly pendant once again around her neck. Beside her, Grayson wore his dress uniform, as did hundreds of other military personnel, who had come to pay their respects. Lisa and Elaine flanked her on the other side, offering silent support. In the front row of mourners sat William Foster, Eddie Pops Langston in his wheelchair, and 5 other surviving members of various Ghost Unit iterations who had come forward after the story broke. These elderly men, once forced into silence, now wore their connection to the unit openly, many sporting fresh tattoos matching the one Clarence had carried for 50 years. The ceremony was both solemn and celebratory, a recognition of loss coupled with the triumph of truth finally acknowledged. As the honor guard folded the flag draped over Clarence's casket with precise, reverent movements, a flyover of military aircraft thundered overhead in the missing man formation. When the ceremony concluded, Danielle was approached by a senior Pentagon official who handed her a sealed envelope. "From the president," the official explained. "He wanted you to have this personally." Inside was a letter of commendation for Clarence, officially recognizing his heroism and service with Ghost Unit 9. Accompanying it was documentation of a new memorial to be erected at the entrance of the Jefferson County VA Hospital, a bronze statue of Clarence Rowe with the inscription "Soldier of Silence." The design prominently featured his Ghost Unit tattoo, no longer a secret, but a symbol of honor. 2 weeks later, Grayson received notification of his promotion and reassignment. No longer relegated to administrative duty, he had been appointed to a new position in Veteran Affairs Policy, with a specific mandate to identify and rectify cases of hidden or altered service records. "This is just the beginning," he told Danielle as they reviewed his assignment papers. "There are thousands of veterans whose true service has been obscured or denied. Ghost Unit 9 was just one example." Lisa, too, found her path transformed by their shared experience. Using her medical background and newfound public platform, she established a nonprofit organization called Unsilenced, dedicated to supporting veterans whose records had been hidden, expunged, or altered. The organization provided both advocacy and psychological support, helping aging veterans reclaim their stories and receive proper recognition. For Danielle, the months following Clarence's death brought both grief and purpose. She took a leave of absence from her therapy practice to write a memoir titled "The Tattoo on His Forearm," chronicling her father's extraordinary life and her own journey to discover her heritage. The book became an instant bestseller, further cementing Ghost Unit 9's place in military history. As spring arrived, bringing new life to Arlington's grounds, Grayson received a mysterious letter postmarked from Cambodia. The sender identified himself only as Jackson, a name mentioned in Clarence's journal as another Ghost Unit member believed killed during the ambush. "I survived," the letter stated simply. "Captured, then escaped. Made a life in the villages. Heard about Clarence from international news. Some ghosts still walk. If America is ready for truth, I am ready to come home." Grayson brought the letter to Danielle immediately. "One more Ghost Unit member still alive," he said, his voice tight with excitement. "Living in Cambodia all these years." "Do you believe it's genuine?" she asked, studying the faded handwriting. The details he includes about the unit, things that weren't in the news reports, they match Clarence's accounts exactly. Grayson's eyes shone with determination. "I'm going to find him, bring him home." In the weeks that followed, Danielle found herself drawn back to Clarence's few possessions: the weathered jacket, his dog tags, the journal that had helped unravel the mystery of Ghost Unit 9. As she carefully turned the pages one evening, a loose sheet fell out, a page she hadn't seen before tucked into the binding at the very back. On it was a simple drawing, a butterfly rendered in faded blue ink, remarkably similar to her pendant. Beside it, Clarence had written, "For her, may she fly free." The date on the page was from 1974, around the time of her birth. Danielle traced the drawing with her finger, imagining her father creating it while thinking of the daughter he might never know. It was a final gift across time, a connection that had endured despite all efforts to sever it. Inspired by Clarence's story, veterans across the nation began coming forward with their own hidden histories, operations erased from official records, units that officially never existed, missions in countries where America had denied involvement. Each revelation added to the tapestry of a more complex military history than had previously been acknowledged. The movement that had begun with one old man's tattoo had grown into a national reckoning with the darker aspects of America's covert operations and the human cost of buried truths. 6 months after Clarence's funeral, The bronze statue was unveiled at the Jefferson County VA hospital entrance. Hundreds attended the ceremony, including many of the young veterans who had once mocked Clarence in the waiting room. They stood in respectful silence as the covering was removed, revealing the lifelike sculpture that captured both Clarence's dignity and his quiet strength. The tattoo on his forearm was prominently displayed, no longer a mark of a secret unit, but a symbol of honor, resilience, and truth finally acknowledged. After the ceremony, a young boy of about 8 approached Grayson, who stood in his dress uniform near the statue. Was he really that brave? The boy asked, looking up at the bronze figure of Clarence. Grayson glanced over at Danielle, who was speaking with a group of veterans, the butterfly pendant gleaming at her throat. A daughter who had found her father, a legacy reclaimed from deliberate erasure. Yes, Grayson answered, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. But he didn't fight for medals or recognition. He fought so we could ask questions like that, so the truth would always find a way to be heard. The boy nodded, solemnly, then reached out to touch the tattooed forearm of the statue. All around them, people were doing the same, a gesture of connection to a man who had refused to let his story die, even when the most powerful forces had tried to bury it. The butterfly pendant around Danielle's neck caught the sunlight as she turned, sending prisms of light dancing across the statue's surface, a final salute to the ghost soldier who had found his way home at last. What would you risk to uncover a buried truth that powerful forces want forgotten? If this journey through shadows, secrets, and sacrifice moved you, please like and subscribe for more untold stories that challenge what we think we know about our shared history.